Hey everybody, Katie here. So when I first moved in, I had posted a few things that I was dealing with that were stressing me out. One was an apparent bat infestation. You guys need to understand my history with bats. It's important. So rewind to when I was in my mid-20s. I'm up visiting my parents in Maine, different part of Maine, but in Maine, for the weekend for my dad's graduation from the Maritime Academy. I'm in Boston at the time. So I go to sleep, windows open, enjoying a beautiful night. And as I'm drifting off to sleep, I think I hear something. Now, I, at the time, was terrified of wild animals. Like, complete phobia, totally irrational. Like, that's the only way I know how to sum it up. It was a phobia. So, and this happened at the height of it. It did nothing to help at the time. It actually took another like 20 years to break through that fear. So as I'm drifting off to sleep, I think I hear something. And so I tell myself, all right, I'm just going to flip on the light. And then the thing that goes bump in the night is going to stop, just like it has every other time in my previous 24 years. I had literally no reason to think it wasn't anything different than an animal walking around down on the seashell mulch bed below. That's what I was telling myself. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to turn it on and it's just going to be gone. So I turn it on, and to my surprise, I watch this thing flit across the room, and I'm thinking, it's a really big moth. I'm like, wait a second. And this is happening split second time in my head. Like, it's a big moth. Wait, it's too big to be a moth. It's got to be a bird. Then, hey, wait a second. Birds don't fly at night. It's got to be oh, fuck, it's a bat. Right as that thought registered, the thing goes, beep, and goes right for my head, completely dive bombs me. So it's like going like this, and I'm like, ah, scream. I completely freak out, put my hands back, so I am like locking down all of the covers around me completely. And then I'm like, now what do I do? I'm covered and I can't get out of the bed. Like, I was too much of a chicken shit to even have my naked arm reach out to grab my cell phone to have my cowardly ass call my parents at the other side of the house. Now, the other piece is for the way that their house was designed, and it wasn't a big house, but the wall that was in between their room and where I was staying, you couldn't hear anything when you were upstairs. So it was completely silent. And my grandmother, who was in the room on the side of the house I was in, she had her deaf ear up, so she doesn't hear anything either. The dog downstairs, she's going apeshit and barking because she hears me screaming. And so I'm up there thinking, how the hell am I getting out of this? This is my worst nightmare come true. Here it is right in front of me, and I am failing miserably at handling it. So then I decide I'm going to have the bright idea of taking the blanket that has holes, the spring blanket, so, I can look through it at least. I'm going to use that, get it over my entire body, and walk out of the room. The spring blanket, mind you, is in between the sheet and the heavier blanket and the comforter. So we got 4 different blankets on me. I'm aiming to go for the second one. Like, no, I couldn't, have my face showing or something and put the comforter around me and get out. Like, no. And not to mention, once the light is on, the bat is not going to fly again. It's going to wait until it's dark because they can't see. That's why they use other things other than their eyes to fly. They use sonar or radar, whatever the hell it is. So it's coming at me as the largest object. But in my freaked out brain, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's out to get me. It's rabid. It's going to bite me and I'm going to die. That is what is in my head. So I am very carefully, without showing any skin, very carefully working the blanket down, working the sheet down, and then, pulling it up out of the end. And, so I'm like twisting and contorting and stuff like underneath the covers because all of this is happening without any limbs coming up. And it took me about an hour. It was a pretty amazing yet ridiculous feat. I challenge any of you to try it. Anyway, so I finally get myself worked out in the blanket, under the spring blanket, and I make a mad dash for the door. Mad dash being 2 steps. Speaking again to the level of fear I had at the time. It was like 1, 2 to go. No, and so I make my mad dash under the blanket very safely. And of course, get the blanket stuck in the door. To open it again, heart's racing. And of course, all this commotion, the dog's going apeshit again. And now my dad is awake, which was exactly what I was trying to avoid. And he's trying to calm down the dog. I go flying down the stairs. The dog goes apeshit again. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, there's a bat. So he bravely goes upstairs. He's sitting there probably 5 minutes or so. The bat's freaked out. I'm freaked out. My mom and my grandma are completely asleep. The dog's going apeshit because now my dad's up there. The damn bat doesn't come out. And my dad comes downstairs. He's like, are you sure there was something there? Like, I am sure. I am sure to this day that there was something there. And I have had some weird ass dreams and some very embarrassing moments the next day where I'm like, okay, that maybe wasn't real. This absolutely was real. I know it was real. So I decided that I'm going to sleep on the couch downstairs. So I'm like, nah, not going back in that room. Hell no. So I still have the spring blanket safely over my head. And then I'm thinking, okay, it's up in the room. So then there's no way it could get me. And then I'm like, but what if it got out of the room? What if it's in the house? So I'm like, okay. So then, of course, every time I start to fall asleep, I think it dive bombs me again. So I have this imaginary rush of air that then wakes me up. And then when the sun started to come up, I was finally like, okay, good. The sun's up. It's going to go to sleep. So I went to sleep. So I'm asleep maybe an hour, hour and a half. My mom comes down the stairs. She's like, Kate, what are you doing down here? I've got still the spring blankets. All she sees is this body completely ensconced in this blanket. And then she says these two eyes pop open and look at her and go, there was a bat. And she thinks the whole thing is hilarious as she's hearing it, you know, because she's hearing cranky commentary from my dad. I'm completely freaked out, and it's very funny the way that it's coming across. So she's just absolutely cracking up. We let the bat out of the house, and it left after that. They didn't have a whole lot of bugs in that house that year. So fast forward to 2020, and then when I move in here, I'm told that I have a bat infestation. So I'm like, oh, no. It turns out I actually do not have any bats. Yay! Super excited about that. The first company I called, they weren't super thorough. And so what they were actually looking at was cobwebs that were hanging down, because they just looked from the outside of the house where some mold mitigation had been done for closing. They didn't actually go up into the house. And when they hadn't called back again, I was like, all right, let me call another company. So I called someone else. And the other funny part of the story is I could have sworn that these bats were waking me up every single night, that they were waking up between 10 and 11 o'clock, and they were loud and they were just making a chaos up there, and just, I couldn't sleep. I have the second company come out a couple weeks ago, and they're like, you don't have bats. They were here for almost 2 hours too. And they went up into my actual attic from inside the house, which the other guy didn't do, showed me pictures going, you actually have one of the cleanest and tightest sealed houses we've ever seen. Yes. Score one for that. Totally happy about that. So what I find comical about that last piece, though, is that the second that I knew that the thing that was making noise didn't have teeth, I haven't been woken up in the middle of the night. I'm sure that it's still the same thing. What's actually happening is flying squirrels are taking a flying leap and landing pretty hard. And when they hit this little piece of metal that they use to seal up the roof, then it vibrates down into the wall and sounds like something's in there. I'm sure they're still doing it, because I was woken up every night for 2 weeks when I thought I had bats. So there is noise happening, but it doesn't bother me anymore. So that is my whole little story with bats, to a point that my beloved best friend, smartass that she is, gave me this shirt for my birthday last week. Let's see if we get in there. Just a girl who loves bats. Thanks, Missa. I love you. Bye, guys.